youtube.com/openupyourmind101.
Of course, I am Professor Griff of the socially conscious, politically conscious hip-hop group Public Enemy. All right? Of course, Serious Minds. Well, if you're tuned in now, of course, your mind is serious, my mind is serious, and we're here. And hopefully we can have serious minds attract serious minds. If you'd like to reach me or just contact me in general, my phone number is 678-557-2919. My email address is seriousmindsinfo@gmail.com. Website will be coming at you in a minute. It's www.seriousminds.com. But for now, you can go to www.professorgriff.me. Of course, go to Facebook at Facebook.com/Serious Minds or Enemy Minds. And Instagram is Serious Minds, Twitter, Serious Minds, and a few other crooked alphabets. You just go to Serious Minds. All right. If you are very unfamiliar with this, you can just go on over to Google or one of the search engines and put in Professor Griff, and all of this information will come up. I cannot do this show without thanking everyone that makes the show happen every single week. To the older gentleman that called me and said my show was too long, I'll reserve my comment. Well, anyway, thanks to Deanna Dawn, thanks to Kiwa, of course, Tasha from Poshtosh, Creative Vance, Vex, Solar Sound Studio, Nazla, Skitty, as always, doing the cashew thing. Anyway, I want to thank Like Minds for definitely sponsoring it, making it happen, and Millennium Music Media. All right. I want y'all to look out for that in June. Millennium 5 launching in June. All right. Shout out to my man Black Goodeye. Had a beautiful conversation. Thanks for reaching out, good brother. And my granddaughter Bed X doing the thing. My man up in DC, Shahid Allah, and my man Guillermo. Guillermo, get out of the bed, man. Just wake up. Anyway, there's a lot going on today, especially with watching the news on how it just always seemed like America, London, Britain, and all of these white countries are always on a manhunt for someone, tracking down someone in response to terrorist attacks and that kind of thing. And we're not insensitive to that, but I think we need to be able to balance the scale out. We'll talk about that hopefully with Brother Rich tomorrow. Shout out to Brother Rich. Well, I had that conversation tomorrow night with Brother Rich as we talk about terror. All right. So it was the Paris attacks, San Bernardino terror attacks, Brussels terror attacks, and yeah, it's becoming yeah. But anyway, we'll talk about that tomorrow. Shout out to my good brother, Dr. Anthony Browder. Thanks for reaching out. The memorial for our good sister, Nana Queen, Dr. Francis Cress Welson this weekend, and shout out to all those that traveled short distance, long distance, but took time to honor our sister, see our sister home. Myself and a few other people that I know was unable to make it, and but I did put together a statement to be read at the memorial service, and I want to thank Dr. Anthony Browder for having someone just reading it and to let the people know my particular sentiment, where my head and heart will always be for our sister. I said in the divine name of the Creator, greetings to all. As we come together to honor our Queen Mother Nana, Dr. Francis Cress Welson, we celebrate the life and spirit of our honored ancestor. May her work and legacy continue in eternity in our hearts, minds, and spirits of those of us who are charged with the duty and responsibility to carry our work forward. Dr. Francis Cress Welson was truly inspiration to us all. I, along with Chuck D and the rest of Public Enemy, have been enriched and enlightened by her work, so much so that when we wrote and produced our third album, Fear of a Black Planet, based on her work, The Crest Theory of Color Confrontation, which tells the unadulterated truth about racism and white supremacy. Her keen and thoughtful insight has given me the necessary tools I need to continue in her name and in our name and in the name of the Creator. Thank you for your gifts of knowledge. You understood that caused us to see our enemy as clear as we see them. You have educated and inspired a nation to understand and appreciate the power of being unapologetically black. Your important work lives in our hearts and minds. You will be with us always. Isis papers, the keys to the colors. May the power of the oneness of peace on our earth be forever, eternally, and in keeping with our tradition. We never speak of our greats as dead, for you will forever be in the head, hearts, and souls of black folks. Thank you for your divine and devoted service. Your contribution will always and forever be divinely appreciated. Get home safe, sister. Mother, Goddess, Nana, Dr. Francis Cress Welson. All the colors are fine, but most black is most beautiful. Dr. Francis Cress Welson. Professor Griff, Public Enemy. That was my statement I wrote, and it was read at the memorial service. And I want to thank all those that received it in the spirit that I wrote it. All right. Once again, thanks to Dr. Anthony Browder. Really appreciate that. It's been an honor to take that sister's work and make it applicable to the lives, my life as an individual, our lives as Public Enemy, and our lives as a human family. To keep her work alive is the mission that we're charged with today. So each one of us take bits and pieces of her work and make it real in our lives. So when we come together, we will be whole. All right. So we got a serious show lined up. We're talking about white privilege for whites only. As we talk about white privilege as a paradigm, as a worldview, the question is often asked, how does white privilege affect people of color on a day-to-day basis? And do we feel that the police are protecting you from other people or protecting other people from you? Are white people smart? Are they smarter than people of color? Do white people make better teachers? Do white people get ahead simply because they are white? How can we turn on the TV and all we see is Dr. Francis Cress Welson said, white, 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 white. I think I forgot, left out a few whites. But this is what she said to us. She put the question before us. Just when I am told about our national heritage or about civilization, I'm shown that I'm not shown people of color. I'm always shown white people. And this is a very, very real dynamic. So we want to kind of dive into this subject, white privilege. A lot of people think that white privilege does not exist and everyone has the same opportunity afforded to them as white people. And tonight, we're going to dive into this particular subject. So welcome once again, family, to Serious Minds Radio with Professor Griff, as we dive into this particular subject, white privilege. I'm going to open up the phone lines early. Of course, the chat room is open, and hopefully you'll have some thought-provoking questions, whatever the side of the coin that you decide to look on or flip it to. Doesn't matter. We need to have the discussion. It may be embarrassing to some. It may put some on the spot. It may cause some other people to take their head out of the sand and actually deal with it. Some of us that are listening within the sound of my voice probably deal with it every single day on the job, with coworkers. Some of you have family members that are white that don't realize that everything in existence speaks to their greatness. And listen, when I say great, I need y'all to look that up in the dictionary. And as I often say, great doesn't necessarily mean good. America's great. America's not necessarily good. All right? Some white people in America have done some great things. But for the betterment of the human family, I would think not. My phone number is 678-557-2919. Send me your questions and your comments. But if you would like to talk tonight here on Serious Minds Radio, call in numbers 347-633-9644, and I will be right black. Yeah, we're black. This is Professor Griff, Serious Minds Radio. Brothers and sisters, we have to be able to be bold enough, black enough, strong enough, intelligent enough, articulate enough, and serious enough to take on those issues that will keep us in the same funk. All right, vibrating on a low vibratory frequency and not being able to confront like mature adults in a mature nation that we are. We have to be able to tackle these subjects. So we're going to kind of go in them unapologetically. But let's talk about it. shout out to my good sister and my good brother, Kamal Kambon and Muia, and of course to my soldiers that are out there around the country. But those brothers and sisters in particular in that particular area, my man B Son, John Trey, Shakir, Sister Kim, the rest of the brothers and sisters. All right. Yes, matter of fact, I got the phone call that I'm coming back to the Raleigh area, so we're gonna make that happen. All right, but anyway, it says years ago, some feminists, and we have some feminists, undercover feminists today in the conscious community. But there's it says years ago, some feminists on the internet told me that I was privileged. Now this is a white man saying this. This is not me. All right. So as a matter of fact, explaining white privilege to a broke ass white person. Well, you could X the word ass out. But anyway, by Gina Crosley. All right. The feministbreeder.com. And it's always good to kind of read the different articles and not stay in the same kind of lane. But when I'm doing the research for this particular subject, I ran across this article, and it kind of jumped out at me simply because it wasn't from that normal kind of vein. So I said, let me dive into it and pull some things out of it. Years ago, some feminists on the internet told me I was privileged. Obviously, my response was, the fuck? I said, I came from the kind of poor that people don't want to believe still exists in this country. It says, have you ever spent a frigid northern Illinois winter without heat or running water? I have. It says, at 12 years old, were you making ramen noodles in a coffee maker with water to fetch from a public bathroom? I was. Have you ever lived in a camper year round and used a random relative's apartment as your mailing address? We did. Did you ever attend so many different elementary schools that you can only remember a quarter of the names? Welcome to my childhood. So when this feminist told me I had white privilege, I told her that my white skin didn't do shit to prevent me from experiencing poverty. Then, like any good educated feminist would, she directed me to Peggy McIntosh's 1988 now famous piece, White Privilege, Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack, which I took the liberty of downloading at the expense of not wasting ink and paper. I've downloaded the 13 pages. White Privilege, Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack. Very, very interesting, and we're going to kind of dive into some of those things that Peggy McIntosh laid out. After one reads McIntosh's powerful essay, it's impossible to deny that being born with white skin in America affords people certain unearned privileges in life that people of another skin color simply are not afforded. For example, I can turn on the television or open to the front page of a newspaper and see people of my race widely represented. When I am told about our national heritage or civilization, I'm shown that people of my color made it what it was. Next, if a traffic cop pulls me over or the IRS audits my tax returns, I can be sure I haven't been singled out because of my race. Next, if I wish to arrange to be in the company of people of my race, I can do that most of the time by simply making it happen. More than half this country is made up of white people from Europe. The few white people that we know that will assimilate and associate with black people that we tend to give carte blanche to in the hood, those are the exception. White people don't look at them as the exception. They look at them as cannon fodder. They can afford to lose some of the Eminems and the Macklemores and these kind of people that want to dip and dab in and out of hip hop. They can afford to lose some of the white the white boys and some of the white girls that we see hanging around black people, and now they've become some of our best friends. I do understand McIntosh's essay, though. It may rub some people the wrong way. There are several points on the list that I felt that spoke more to the author's status as a middle-class white person. For example, if it says, if I should need to move, I can pretty much be sure of renting or purchasing a house in an area which I can afford and in which I would want to live. But is that a reality for black people? No. The real estate agents tend to steer us into areas where it's most of us. But let them find a foreclosed home or a rundown home or a home that they can afford to sink another $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, as you see all the time on some of these television shows. They come fix it and flip it, and all these television shows about fixing houses and all this kind of stuff. They're so quick to go into the black neighborhood and find a home, fix it up, and make it the best looking house on the block simply because of white privilege. Some people will beg to differ with that, but they will come among black people and live and just kind of stick it out. And as we always say in Harlem, and especially in New York and Brooklyn and other places, as soon as you see white women jogging with them little skimpy ass little shorts on, jogging with the dog, there goes the neighborhood. And that's a very real dynamic. Some white people listening to this may say, "Yeah, being kind of racist." No, black people cannot be racist. I'm going to say that again in English. Black people cannot be racist. Prejudice, maybe. We can discriminate to a degree, but we have no power in this country to be racist. Being racist has power components to it which black people do not have. Plain and simple. I could get on these airways every Tuesday and call you a cracker every single Tuesday, which is not a bad term. Hell, it's the term you made up for yourself. The cracker was the white man on the plantation that cracked the whip. They simply called him a cracker. All right? But I can't change the dynamic of any white person listening to me right now. I can't stop you from getting a loan or stop you from going to whatever school you desire or stop your children from receiving a good education. But the flip side of that, can you stop mine? Yes, and we're going to dive into that. We're going to hear from Tim Wise and a few other people, Joy DeGruy and a few other people, all right, about this particular subject. So let's dive knee deep, as they say, as George Clinton, Parliament Funkadelic say. We're going to dive knee deep in it, and we're going to get the pros and the cons, and we'll just kind of work this subject out, all right? This is Professor Griff here. As a matter of fact, hold on. White Privilege, Unpacking the Invisible Backpack by Peggy McIntosh. As a matter of fact, let me go over this, highlight some things, and I will be right back with you. Let's check this clip out. We'll be right back. As a matter of fact, if you're trying to call, if you want to pass the number on, the call-in number is 347-633-9644. The chat room is open, phone lines open. I want to hear what you have to say about white privilege. Let's talk.
A few years back, white Americans were asked whether or not we believed that racial discrimination was still a significant national problem for people of color, or whether it was just a problem, like junk mail. Wrong phone number, 2 a.m, you can't get back to sleep, it's raining and you want to go outside for a jog, a problem, but one you'll get over, Whether it wasn't much of a problem, wasn't a problem at all, we just weren't sure. They also asked black and brown folk this question. Folks of color, it won't surprise you, said, yes, it is a significant problem, actually, and not just because I read about it in a sociology textbook. I actually have lived it and would be more than happy to tell you what kind of problem it's been, but these were pollsters, man. They didn't care about that. They just wanted the yes or no, then they were on to the next house. Then they asked white folks, is it or is it not a significant national problem, racial discrimination for people of color and against people of color, and only 6% 6 out of 100 said yes, that it was a significant national problem. Just to give you an idea of how bad that is, I would have you compare it to a survey taken a few years earlier where approximately 12% of white Americans said we believe there was a fairly decent chance that Elvis Presley might still be alive. I don't know how good you are at math. I'm not very good myself, but that's a ratio that I can calculate. What that means is that white Americans are twice as likely to believe that Elvis might still be alive than we are to believe what people of color tell us they experience on a fairly regular basis. That is denial so profound as to boggle the mind, but there it is. And the people who are saying it are not mean-spirited, they're not hard-hearted, they're not bad people. I firmly believe that most people are good people. I could be wrong about this, but I have two little girls, ages 6 and 4, and I choose as a parent to believe that most people are good. If you have evidence to the contrary, keep it to yourself. I do not want to know it or hear it this evening. What I do know is that those individuals who said that, as well-meaning as they may have been, that they really didn't see it as a significant problem, aren't new in their denial. See, it's one thing for young people to think that the problem is solved. I almost get that. I almost understand it, because if you're under the age of 25, maybe even under the age of 35, what you know, what we tend to know, younger people, about this history and about this legacy is what we see in that grainy black and white footage every MLK Day, or maybe during Black History Month. If I were to ask you, do you believe that folks of color people of color, they didn't use that term, it said racial minorities. Do you think that racial minorities are treated equally in your community? And 80% of white folks said yes. In 1962, when Gallup asked, do you think that black children receive equal very month of that march, which now it seems like every white liberal wants you to believe they were at. The very month of that march, white folks were asked by Newsweek what they thought about it. They said 2/3 of whites said that Dr. King and the movement were pushing too far, too fast, asking for too much, and too soon. The idea the 1890s, what did white folks say? Those southern editors of newspapers where I'm from, they would say, we get along fine with our Negroes down here if you Yankees would just leave us alone and stop messing in our business. Go back to 1850 and read what Dr. Samuel Cartwright, a well-respected member in good standing of the medical profession in this country, said. Not only was racism not a problem, there wasn't even a word for that yet, slavery wasn't a problem, so much so that he decided that any slave who would run away obviously had a mental illness. Because you'd have to be crazy to run away from bondage. So he came up with a term, he called it drapetomania. Don't even know what the root of that is, don't want to know, don't understand where the word came from, but that's what he called it, drapetomania. You must be crazy, you must be mentally ill to run away from your loving master. Denial. gotten it right yet have suddenly become highly, highly perceptive. To know. We are not tested on it. If I don't know what people of color experience, what happens to me in this country? Virtually nothing. But if people of color don't know my reality, if people of color don't know white reality better than white folks have to know it, if they cannot regurgitate it to us better than we would ever be able to regurgitate it to ourselves, all hell breaks loose. So people of color are going to have to know white history, white literature, white art, white theater, white poetry, white drama. I know we don't call it that. That's sort of the point. When your stuff is the stuff against which everybody else's stuff is compared and found lacking, you don't have to name it. It's just the norm. That's why, for those still confused, we don't have White History Month, because we have several. They go by the tricky names of May and June, July, August, September. Pretty much any month that we have not designated as someone else's month, that's White History Month. But we take it for granted because we don't have to know other folks' reality. That's a privilege. That's an advantage. That's a head start. And it's one we must think about. See, that's the other piece of this, right? It's one thing for white folks to acknowledge racism. Because, white liberals will. God bless. White liberals will acknowledge that racism is real. Oh, my goodness, we should do something about that. Yes, we should. It's terrible, that racial profiling, that housing discrimination. My goodness, it's awful. Yes, it is. But just because we acknowledge racism and discrimination doesn't mean that we'll necessarily acknowledge the flip side of that. Doesn't mean that we will acknowledge that for everyone who's targeted by that discrimination, which we're willing to admit exists, there is somebody else not being targeted, guess whom, and that those individuals are elevated by definition and receive an advantage, receive a subsidy, receive a privilege in the process. You see, we like to talk about those who are down as if there is no up, right? We like to use language that obscures the interrelationship of down and up. Now, down has no meaning without an up. It is a relative term. But we talk about those at the bottom of the hierarchy, not paying attention to the fact that for anyone who's down, someone is above them, and they're above them because they're down. We use this language that makes it impossible. And when I say we, I don't mean like right-wing folk. I'm not even talking about them. I'm talking about nice, liberal, caring service providers. Right? People who just want to help. Right? I just want to help the underprivileged. That's the word we use. I've used it before. I don't use it anymore, except in a speech like this. Right? We just want to help the underprivileged. But what's wrong with that word, folks? At least two things that ought to be pretty obvious to you, right? Number one is it's a passively constructed term, right? It's the passive voice, as my English teacher would say. Underprivileged doesn't imply that anybody did anything to anyone. It's just there's privilege and I will be damned. There you are under it. We could just figure out how you got down there. We could solve all the problems of the Western world. But we don't want to know how you got down there. No, that's why we came up with that bumper sticker. Stuff happens. That's the G-rated version. That's a bumper sticker that only a straight white upper middle class male could have made. Because anyone who isn't straight, anyone who isn't male, anyone who isn't white, anyone who isn't upper middle class knows that stuff doesn't just happen. Stuff gets done by people to people. Nothing is a coincidence. Nothing is random. It is an osmosis. And so we act as if it's some passive thing, but yet that's not the case. And the second problem with the term underprivileged is even bigger than the first one, is it's a relative term. Again, this is grammar. Man, you don't like this, you can disagree with anything else I say tonight. If you have a problem with this piece right here, you must take it up with your third grade grammar teacher, because it is not on me. If we use the word underprivileged, then by definition there must be an overprivileged, but we don't use that word in polite conversation. Indeed, it doesn't exist in any dictionary to be found on the planet. If you don't believe me, go back to your res hall, go back to your apartment, go back to your home, go back to your place of employment, And tomorrow I want you to punch in 2 little words. The first one, underprivileged. Make no mistake, your spell check is going to recognize that word. It's in their dictionary. They can give you the definition. They can give you the synonym. They can give you the antonym. They can show you the phonetic way in which you should spell it. Now come down one line, type in the word overprivileged, and watch how fast that little red line pops up. That line which says, nope, you're an idiot. Making up words that don't exist. Try again and get back to us. But if there's an underprivileged, there must be an overprivileged. Why don't we talk about it? Because that would require that we acknowledge that if there are 2 to 3 million people being targeted for race-based housing discrimination because they are people of color every year, that is 2 to 3 million more places I can live. If people of color are being targeted and profiled and I'm not, that is an advantage. It may or may not have material consequences. A lot of privilege isn't about material acquisition, so please know this. When I talk about white privilege, I don't even mean money necessarily. For some, it definitely translates to that. For some, it has certainly meant that. But even for those white folks who don't have that money, white privilege is real at the psychological level.
Gods and goddesses, kings and queens, brothers and sisters, you're now tuned to Serious Minds Radio with the Minister of Information, Professor Griff of Public Enemy.
Yes, I'm black. Very, very interesting. That was Tim Wise. You can go to YouTube and put in Tim Wise, and he talks about white privilege. All right, this is Professor Griff on Serious Minds Radio every Tuesday from 8 to 10, and I'm not sure what's going on in the chat room, but we need to put that link in the chat room of Tim Wise. Go to YouTube and just check him out. As he mentioned some very critical things. And it made me think towards the end, he talked about the whole idea of underprivileged. If it's a group of people that's underprivileged, then it must be a group of people that's overprivileged. And just something simple, as it is something else that's very simple that kind of escapes us. I'm going to read a few things. And not only that, let me read this. It says that there's a misnomer. And a lot of people think when you're talking about services that are provided to the quote-unquote underprivileged, and I guess that means black people and Spanish people and other people, Africans and people from the islands and that kind of thing, these services that are provided, you would think from how people talk about these particular services like food stamps, you would think the vast majority of people in this country that get food stamps are black people. Quite the contrary. It says the food stamp capital of the United States is white and Republican, in spite of the prevailing stereotypes of assumptions about who uses SNAP food stamps benefits the most in the United States. The highest usage is not in Compton, Queens, nor the south side of Chicago. Instead, a city that is 99.9, 22%. Did you get the numbers? 99.9, 22% white, and 95% Republican comes in the lead. Osling County, Kentucky, is a community of about 5,000 residents, earning the lowest median household income in the country outside of Puerto Rico, according to the United States Census, meaning the people there are relatively poor. But these people get the highest food stamps usage in America in this particular county in Kentucky. 99.22% of whites, 95% of them are Republican. More white people on food stamps than black. You can look it up. It's not difficult. But if we choose to follow the norm, if we choose to just kind of go along just to get along with people and accept the fact. I know comedians make jokes about it, and other people may buy into some of the statistics and get razzle-dazzled with some numbers and that kind of thing. But if you really look at it and put it under the microscope, more white people are getting food stamps than black people. But the way it's portrayed is that black people are sucking the government dry of its resources in a program that was designed to help people out from the jump, from the beginning. Why would anyone get mad if you exercise your right and get food stamps? All right? Um, anyway, but that's just one simple point. Dr. Joy DeGruy says America's pathology is her denial. America's pathology is her denial. The mere fact that white people don't want to talk about it is a clear indication that something is wrong. And as Tim Wise just said, generations have tucked it away and put it on the back burner and don't want to discuss it. That every time the question of race comes up, it makes white people nervous. Negroes get agitated. White people get embarrassed. Some people say, okay, here we go with that subject again. And sad but true, some people want to dismiss it, but with what Donald Trump is doing, and you see every single day, all right, racism smacking you right smack dab in the face, and you're seeing white privilege. Shout out to Erica and shout out to Sifu, the Foxies, doing the damn thing every single week to help make this show happen. And this is very, very real dynamic. But on a small level, some things that happen to us that we may not look at as being white privilege. Let's listen to what the doctor has to say about this, and let's talk about this. Call the number 347-6339-644. Let's listen to Dr. Joy DeGruy.
My sister-in-law, who's half black, half white, but looks white, blue eyes, whiter than most white folks, very white. She and I, we kind of grew up together. We raised our children together. So they're first cousins, and it's a wonderful, very, very multicultural family. So we're going in a Safeway one day. And Kathleen, my sister-in-law, is in front of me, and she's, writing a check for her groceries. Now, my daughter, who at the time was 10 years old, was standing with me, and I was directly behind her, getting ready to get my groceries. So Kathleen comes up, and the checker, who's a strawberry blonde, freckled, very delightful, warm, the checker, this young woman, is talking to Kathleen. Hey, how you doing? Isn't it a nice day today? They're just chatting up. And she says, yeah. So Kathy writes her check, and she steps off to the side with her groceries because she's waiting for me. Of course, again, Kathleen looks white, right? So I come up. No conversation. She looks up at me. Absolutely no, just little chatter. And I write my check. My daughter, however, is 10, notices immediately the difference in how she responds to me. So I write my check, and she goes, I'm going to need 2 pieces of ID. At which point, my daughter looks at me, and she gets very, very embarrassed, and tears are kind of coming up in her eye, like, Mommy, you're not gonna let her do this. Why is she doing this to us, right? So I'm trying to figure out what I should do, because behind me are 2 elderly white women, right? And I'm thinking, okay, so then I become the angry black woman, right? And they're going to be, and I'm just trying to second guess all the drama. So then I just give her the 2 pieces of ID. I said, some things you got to choose your battles, right? And then it gets worse. She pulls out the bad check book, right? So this is the book that shows the people who've written bad checks. So she starts searching for my license in the bad checks, at which point it's just out of control now. Just as I'm standing there trying to decide what to do, and it's really deeply humiliating. Now my daughter is in full-blown emotionally upset, who's 10. My sister-in-law walks back over, and she steps in and she says, excuse me, why are you doing this? And the checker goes, well, what do you mean? She goes, why are you taking her through all of these changes? Why are you doing that? She goes, well, this is our policy. She goes, no, it's not your policy because you didn't do that with me. Oh, well, I know you've been. She goes, no, she's been here for years. I've only lived here for 3 months. And so at this point, the 2 white elderly ladies go, oh, I can't believe what this checker has done with this woman. It is totally unacceptable. At which point, the manager walks over. So the manager walks over and says, is there a problem here? And then my sister-in-law again responds. She goes, yes, there is a problem here. Here is what happened. So you see, she used her white privilege. And even though Kathleen is half black and half white, she recognizes what that means. And she made the statement. She pointed out the injustice. And she, as a result of that one act, influenced everyone in that space. But what would have happened I can't know for certain had the black woman said, "This is unfair. Why are you doing this to me?" Would it have had the same impact? But Kathleen knew that she walked through the world differently than I did. And she used her white privilege to educate and make right a situation that was wrong. That's what you can do every single day.
All right, it's Professor Griff in Black. That was Dr. Joy DeGruy. And a simple scenario that she gives us on how white people treat black people, and quick to talk about this is their policy. Very, 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 very critical, simply because in most cases, we would have not have recognized that, simply because we tend to let things like that, we don't speak about it. It's just something that we don't want to kind of deal with. But in this case, it happened to the doctor, and she gave it to us in a way, in a small little capsule that we can probably understand. The next couple of examples I'm going to give you may not be that pleasant. All right? It says here that there are many different types of privilege, not just skin color privilege, that impact the way people can move through the world or are discriminated against. There are all things, these are all things you are born into, not things you earned, that afford you opportunities others may not have. These are all the things that you're born into, not things you've earned, that afford you opportunities that others may not have. For example, your citizenship. Simply being born in this country affords you certain privileges non-citizens will never have access to. Simple as that. I don't care how much paperwork you fill out downtown. Or class. Being born into a financial stable family can help guarantee your health, happiness, safety, education, intelligence, and future opportunities. Sexual orientation. Being born straight, every state in this country affords you the privilege that non-straight folks have to fight in the Supreme Court for. Sex. By being born male, this is white now, you can assume that you can walk through a parking garage without wearing, you'll be raped, at that defense attorney will then blame it on you and what you were wearing. Ability, then it's gender, then it's a few other categories, all of which afford white people without even have to fight for these particular things. As I often say, everything speaks to their existence in this country. It speaks to white existence, and it speaks against black people. Here is Bill O'Reilly, and I know Fox News really hates black people, and they just have an entire agenda of just like hating black people. Everyone from Hannity, Combs, O'Reilly, O'Toole, and O'Fool, and the rest of them. All right. So let's hear what this gentleman has to say.
Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly, reporting tonight from Southern California. Thanks for watching us. The truth about white privilege, that is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. Last night on The Factor, Megyn Kelly and I debated the concept of white privilege, whereby some believe that if you are Caucasian, you have inherited advantages in America. Talking Points does not believe in white privilege. However, there is no question that African Americans have a much harder time succeeding in our society than whites do. But the primary reason is not skin color, it's education, and not only book learning. Here are the facts. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the unemployment rate for black Americans is 11.4%. It's just over 5% for whites, 4.5% for Asians. So, do we have Asian privilege in America? Because the truth is that Asian American households earn far more money than anyone else. The median income for Asians, close to $69,000 a year. It's $57,000 for whites, $33,000 for blacks. So the question becomes, why? And the answer is found in stable homes and an emphasis on education. 88% of Asian Americans graduate from high school, compared to 86% for whites and just 69% for blacks. That means 31% of African Americans have little chance to succeed in the free marketplace because they're uneducated. They're high school dropouts. Asian Americans also tend to keep their families intact. Just 13% of Asian children live in single-parent homes, compared to a whopping 55% for blacks and 21% for whites. So there you go. That is why Asian Americans, who often have to overcome a language barrier, are succeeding far more than African Americans and even more than white Americans. Their families are intact and education is paramount. American children must learn not only academics, but also civil behavior, right from wrong, as well as how to speak properly and how to act respectfully in public. If African American children do not learn those things, they will likely fail as adults. They will be poor. They will be angry. And they often will be looking to blame someone else. One caveat, the Asian American experience historically has not been nearly as tough as the African American experience. Slavery is unique, and it has harmed black Americans to a degree that is still being felt today. But in order to succeed in our competitive society, every American has to overcome the obstacles they face. And here is where the African American leadership in America is failing. Instead of preaching a cultural revolution, the leadership provide excuses for failure. The race hustlers blame white privilege, an unfair society, a terrible country. So the message is, it's not your fault if you abandon your children, if you become a substance abuser, if you are a criminal. No, it's not your fault, it's society's fault. That is the big lie that is keeping some African Americans from reaching their full potential. Until personal responsibility and a cultural change takes place, millions of African Americans will struggle, and their anger, some of it justified, will seethe. The federal government cannot fix this problem. Only a powerful message of personal responsibility can turn things around. And that's the memo.
Here is the synthesis. Just me, all right? Just in one small little kind of way. Tuck it, ball it up. You know how you have that last dollar you don't want to, or $10 you don't want to spend, and you put it in that little tiny little pocket. Just tuck it away and just kind of roll with me for a minute, all right? You had you got the thesis and the DeGruy gave us an example. You heard Bill O'Reilly's racist behind, and here is the synthesis, just to a small degree.
Michael Eric Dyson, where are we on race relations in America in light of what's just happened here?
Well, it's obviously a very tense time. Look, what's happening there is not simply about St. Louis, but it's about the nation. And St. Louis is emblematic, or at least Ferguson is emblematic of those larger shifts. You got white flight of a formerly predominantly white suburb is now, 65% black. You've got 22% poverty. You've got the over-policing of an entire community who feel racially harassed by the police. Every 28 hours across America, a black person is killed by a security guard, a police officer, or some other executive of the state or police force. So this is an extraordinarily incendiary situation. And look at what's been done. The militarization to which you referred earlier has revealed itself to be something that's not effective when applied to American citizens. On top of that, the tone-deaf police chief, the tone-deaf mayor, and the tone-deaf governor have not added anything to the situation. We understand they're in very difficult situations. He did, that is the governor, bring Ron Johnson in. I'm from the community. I understand your plight and predicament. Let me keep the peace while also understanding what you have to say is legitimate. And finally, I yearn for more response from the White House. This president knows better than most what happens in poor communities that have been, antagonized historically by the hostile relationship between black people and the police department. It is not enough for him to come on national television and pretend that there's a false moral equivalency between police people who are armed and black people who are vulnerable constantly to this. He needs to use his bully pulpit to step up and to articulate this as a vision, not necessarily in terms of public policy alone, because Eric Holder is doing a tremendous job in filling in those gaps, but we need presidential leadership. He needs to step up to the plate and be responsible.
I think Michael is exactly right that you can't create this trust at the last minute, but you can make the situation way worse at the last minute, and that is exactly
Bill O'Reilly and Michael Eric Dyson, and hopefully I've kind of laid out to lay a base to lend some kind of supporting kind of material for several points of references and several points of view. I'm trying not to say the word perspective, several perspectives. And but we need to kind of synthesize those, and we need to come up with something that's going to work if we're going to continue to move forward with this solution think, as I often say we need to do here on Serious Minds Radio. We need to have this solution think kind of attitude towards things. So it's very, very critical that we listen, we take notes, because Michael Eric Dyson talked about Barack Obama stepping up to the plate and using his presidential bully pulpit. So we could say that about the pastors and the preachers. Bill O'Reilly talked about education is paramount, speaking right, acting right, dressing right, and all this kind of stuff. And I don't think Bill O'Reilly, well, I know Bill O'Reilly knows the history on what white people have done to black people before, during, and after slavery, and right on up to today. So that is not going to fly. Then he turns around and calls us race hustlers. That's not going to fly. But right now I'm going to open up the phone lines. The calling number is 347-633-9644. I want to know what you have to say about this particular subject, white privilege. All right. Caller from area code 702. It might sound like it's Vegas. 702. What's good? This is Professor Griff here on Serious Minds. What's your name? Where you calling from?
It's Tay. Professor Griff, I love you. I've been a day one fan, but I really want to cry because it really go deep, because I live here in Vegas. Now, I done met Flav. I done went to the Soul Train Awards, but I went to the Billboard Awards. Now, I'm a chunky girl, but I remember that the staff said to put the PYTs in front, and the PYTs meant the pretty young white girls in the front of the Billboard Awards, and they put us black people in the front. Now, that means that now they're hearing this and that I'm not going to be invited back to be in the audience, but it's all right. So it's just the point that white privilege, it goes a lot of ways. I was raped, and the police department did not tell us that they were releasing rapists who raped 32 women in our community, but yet and still a girl from the north side of Buffalo got raped. They were all on it. So I'm saying that this white privilege, it goes a lot of ways, and it goes very deep, and it hurts my heart, you know what I'm saying, because I've been afflicted. I've been through so many changes and so many things, and my kids have went through it also. But I'm just saying that the white privilege is real, but even when you have the white people telling you that it's white privilege, you know that it's real. It's not a fake thing, you know what I'm saying? We're not just on here making up conspiracies and all of that. This is really real, but I'm telling you that the media, they will talk about Brussels and Belgium, and I feel sorry for the people who got killed, but it's been people who was killed a couple weeks ago in Africa, and it was way more people, but we got people dying in Flint, Michigan, but they only give them 10 minutes, but yet still, anytime it happens in Europe or to a white country, they give them all day, all night media, but they don't give the Africans or the black people in America, they don't give us no media. So what's going on? Because there's babies dying from lead, and going to kill them, and that's going to follow them the rest of their life. Even the adults, not just the children, but the adults too. Thank you, Professor Griff. I appreciate you, sir.
Oh, give thanks. Thank you for calling every single week. Really appreciate you, all right? All right, take care, sis. Okay. Yeah, that sister always has something to say. You could tell she listens very intently. And she's speaking from that pain of being raped and being abused and the system not treating her like the system would treat the white girls from the other side of the town. The sister said, I'm chunky, but they moved them pretty little white things up to the front. She said that she might not be invited back. But anyway, sister, just do your chunky thing. Don't even worry about it. All right? Matter of fact, I'd show back up chunkier. Anyway, caller from the 704 area code. It's Professor Griff from Serious Minds Radio. What's good?
What's good? Peace, Hotel.
Peace, Hotel. How you feel, good brother?
I'm doing all right. How you doing?
All right, maintain it. So what's going on? What's on your mind?
Just building off of the clips that you had played. Tim Wise touching on some certain things that he was saying as far as how it was policy, the language that they use, Griff. Mm-hmm. And the whole thing, what was it? I had it in my head when he was speaking on how they would look away from the 1850s, like we would scream it's a problem, but they will always scream it's not a problem. Everything was going exactly the way they planned, basically. So because they didn't see it as a problem, is because this is how their plan was working. This is the way they orchestrated this country to be ran. So
exactly.
Us as black people, we have to take a step back and study from the beginning, just like Tim Wise was able to go back and tell you from the 1850s to the 1890s all the way to now, which was 2007 as far as the clip. We have to go back and do the same research and figure out who sat down to orchestrate the plan? Why was the plan made? And we have to sit down and dialogue with each other first before we can take it to the table with them. Because they know white privilege exists, and we know white privilege exists. But the thing is, we got to stop hollering about it being existent and start bringing out the evidence of how is it affecting us as a people.
Right, exactly. All right, that's very deep insight because Tim Wise is one of those kind of individuals that you would think like him and Bernie Sanders, you would never think that they're white and Jewish. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because of the way they
and then that was another thing that you just brought it up. He also said that the liberals, when he was talking about the 60s and the 62 era, about the March on Washington, he also said, I had caught this and had highlighted it, when he said that most of the liberals will always say that they were there at the March on Washington. And I said, who does that sound like right now?
Yeah, Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders, yep.
Mm-hmm.
So, they use that avenue to reel us in. That's nothing but fake. And we have to keep our eyes open. None of these dudes are for us, man. If Obama didn't do nothing for us, what makes you think any of these white people that's being elected? Yeah. And none of them. Hillary, none of them. We're all, like you said on Brother Rich show, Griff, that was a beautiful show. If we don't get our stuff together 2017, it's going to be hell to pay for us.
Yeah, exactly.
So we got to get our stuff right, man.
All right. Really appreciate you, good brother. All right.
Peace.
All right. Peace. All right. This is Professor Griff here on Serious Minds. I'm taking the next call. The caller from the 2-6-7.
I am not going to be part of a relationship like that. So unless he has something new to say, there's really no point in us having a conversation at all.
Whatever I have to do to make you comfortable with that situation. Then that could be my last pick.
Call up from the 267. You got to turn your TV down, whatever. Hit us back. We'll be glad to take your call. Some interesting things that Macklemore laid out. He says he pulled into the parking lot, parked it, zipped up the park, and joined the procession of marchers. In my head, like, is this awkward? Should I even be marching thinking that they can't, how can I breathe? Thinking that they can't, what do I sing? I want to take a stance because we are not free. And then I thought about it. We are not we. Am I outside looking in, or am I in the inside looking out? This is the question that he asked himself. And this is about the 5th or 6th question that he asked himself in this verse so far. It is my place to give my 2 cents, or should I stand on the side and shut my mouth? No justice, no peace. Okay, I'm saying that they're chanting out Black Lives Matter, but I don't say it back. Is it okay for me to say, I don't know? So I watch and stand in the front of a line of police that look the same as me, only separated by a badge and a baton, a can of mace and a mask, a shield, a gun with gloves and hands that gives an alibi in case somebody dies behind the bullet that flies out of the 9. Takes another child's life on sight. That's his first verse. You could tell he put some thought into it. You could tell that he kept his finger, is keeping his finger on the pulse of what's going on in America. But I do not mean to be what some of y'all are about to call me right now, which is a player hater. But is Macklemore exercising his white privilege by putting out a song like this? Simply because I have about 30 songs in my phone sent to me by brothers with lyrics just as deep as this. I played a song last week from the brother Jaja Mali, and just as deep. But who do you think will get to play? You understand what I'm saying? With Macklemore a minute ago was marrying 33 homosexual couples on the awards, went through the homosexual ritual, now turns around and exercises his white privilege and gives us white privilege part 2. We could go deeper into the song, but I want us to think about this. I want us to think about this. Bernie Sanders exercising white privilege. They spoke before APAC. If you don't know what APAC is, look it up. I watched and sat quietly and listened to Hillary Clinton shuck and jive and do backflips for white Jewish people to win their support. Israel must have came out of her mouth at least 149 times. All of them every 4 years got to go and kiss the ring and bow down to Israel so that Israel can keep getting the billions of dollars that it gets from the taxpayers' dollars here in America every single year. That's another subject for another time, but this is very real. See, this is white privilege at its finest, all right? And we need to look at it as such, and don't be ashamed to kind of look at it and deal with it for what it is, all right? Here it says white privilege, the perks. White people receive all kinds of perks as a function of their white skin privilege. Consider the following. When I cut my finger and go to my school or office first aid kit, the flesh-colored Band-Aid aid generally matches my skin tone. Some people say, well, no, they got Band-Aids now, man. I went to Wally World, I went to Walgreens or CVS, man. I got some Band-Aids that match my skin or some rainbow-colored. Okay. When I stay at a hotel, the complimentary shampoo generally works with the texture of my hair. This is a white person talking. Have you ever went into a hotel room and then you went to go take a shower and the shampoo is for black hair? Some people say, well, what is black hair? Just be quiet and get real. You know what black hair is. It says, when I run to the store to buy pantyhose, at least at the last minute, the nude color generally appears nude on my legs. This is a white person talking. All right. When I buy hair care products in the grocery store or a drugstore, my shampoos or conditioners are in the aisles and section labeled hair care, and not in the separate section for ethnic products. Wow. I can purchase travel-sized bottles of my hair care products at most grocery stores and drugstores. Can you? That's just one section. Then it talks about white privilege advantages. All right? It says certainly white privilege is not limited to perks like Band-Aids and hair care products. The second function of white skin privilege is that it creates significant advantages for white people. There are scores of things that I, as a white person, generally do not encounter, have to deal with, or even recognize. For example, my skin color does not work against me in terms of how people perceive my financial responsibility, style of dress, public speaking skills, or job performance. People do not assume that I got where I am professionally because of my race, and they should add, or they did, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself, or because of my affirmative action programs. Next, it says store security personnel or law enforcement officers do not harass me, pull me over, or follow me because of my race. White privilege as a worldview, and worldview is simply a paradigm. All right. The third thing that white privilege does is shape the way in which we view the world and the way in which the world views us. The perks and advantages described above are part of a phenomenon, but not all of it. Consider the following. 1. When I am told about our national heritage, I think I read this earlier, or civilization, I am shown that people of my color made it what it is. Streets and schools and buildings and monuments and important holidays are named after me. It says, related, the schools that I attend or have attended use standard textbooks which widely reflect people of my color and their contribution to the world. Next, it says, when I look at the national currency or see photographs of monuments in the National Mall, Washington, D.C., and other places, I see people of my race widely represented and celebrated. As a white person, I see myself represented in all these places, and until a couple of years ago, I never questioned that representation or why people of color were excluded. After all, people like me have done a lot for this country and for the world. If people of color have done their part, so that there it goes, they too would see themselves represented. Wow. Brothers and sisters, here's a homework assignment. Go to Google or whatever your search engine is and look at the accomplishments on why this world would not function and be what it is if it were not for black people. I'm just talking about the inventions. Wash machine, the stoplight, and all these other inventions. Just Google that for yourself so you don't be deceived as when white people come with this particular argument. We've contributed a whole lot more than white people give us credit for. Michelle, I wanted to play Michelle Alexander, and as she talks about this whole idea of the war on drugs and how it plays into mass incarceration, which is very real in this particular subject that we're dealing with. Right. Michelle Alexander was on Democracy Now, and she talked about the war on drugs as it pertains to mass incarceration, and she goes over statistics, and she kind of goes into this whole idea of just, of course, the CCA, the private prisons, and that kind of thing, and this whole thing with white privilege. And she goes into the statistics where she talks about white people do just as much drugs selling and using as black people. But when you start talking about white privilege, white people are receiving less jail time, and any jail time at all, when it comes to the same kind of crimes. And this is very critical. And a lot of people won't look at this as being white privilege simply because they're not looking at white privilege as a part of the system of racism and white supremacy. It says racism is a doctrine or teaching without scientific support that does three things. First, it claims to find racial differences in things like character and intelligence. Second, racism asserts that superiority of one race over another or others. Finally, it seeks to maintain that dominance through a complex system of beliefs, behaviors, use of language, and policies. Racism ranges from the individual to the institutional level and reflects and enforces a pervasive view in white-dominated U.S. culture that people of color are inferior to whites. When you talk about a system of racism, white supremacy, it couldn't be what it is, as Amos Wilson teaches us, unless we are who we are. The whole idea of the war on drugs is basically to keep people on drugs and force their agenda. But you have to put up a front as though you're fighting this whole, drug culture. When in most cases we could prove that you're the one bringing the drugs in to the country, creating the condition in the projects in the ghetto, so to speak, and in other places that would keep black people in this revolving prison door in this system, which is a part of a larger system of racism, white supremacy. All right, we're going to continue this conversation. We're going to go back to the phone lines. Caller from the 216 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yes, my name is Nia. I'm calling from Cleveland, Ohio.
Greetings. How are you?
Okay, fine. And you? Great show. But I wanted to comment on that commentary you were reading regarding I came in late, but you were reading about sounded like white privileges and naming the things that they don't have to be bothered with, like the shampoo, the Band-Aid, and things like that.
Yeah. Okay.
See, that's what I'm saying. That I knew that was the plan from the beginning. When my son goes to his school and it's he's with the white children. That's why I tell him. I point things out in cartoons and movies.
Right.
So he can be aware. And I say, now, when you go back to school, those same white boys are seeing this same thing. So imagine their self-esteem, And I just think we have to start pointing this out to our children. We have to get real with them. I know we cannot sugarcoat it no more because they're blatant with it. That's why in the Star Wars, the brother in there, look how weak they betrayed him. They portrayed him.
Yeah, but you know something? When they have black actors playing opposite of white actors, even if they're female, the black man always has to play the effeminate role. Even if he's not gay, it's still a weaker role. Right.
It's still a weaker role. And when that movie came out, I shared with my 8-year-old. I said, see, now when you go back to school, everybody saw this. I said, so now, you're going to stand your ground. I had to remind him, you are a little God growing. You hear me?
Right.
I had to tell him this. And he's like, okay, Mom, yeah. I said, all right. And it's just, hearing that, I knew this was the plan from the beginning, to empower them. It's not that we are inferior of them.
No, I understand exactly what you're saying. I went to the movies recently, the other day, last week, and I saw London's Falling. And I said to myself at the end, I said, something? They always have to have movies like this come out every once so often to boost the white psyche, the white ego. You understand what I'm saying? The white boy comes in and saves the day and kills up 100 Arab terrorists. No, I'm dead serious. I mean, there was more bloodshed and more bullets flying in that movie than I've seen in the last 8 movies. You understand what I'm saying? But at the end, the President of the United States and the Secret Service agent were the heroes of the day and having to kill up, 200 Arab-looking guys. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we can have faith in them again, in their institutions,
But you see, that character is Donald Trump. You understand what I'm saying? He wants America to be great again. And regardless of what they have to do, if they have to slap people back into this white reality, they will.
Exactly. That's what they want. That's a subliminal message again.
Right.
But I was going to say, when you were talking about the movies, look at the movie Gods of Egypt. I mean, I didn't go see it, but you know how I saw it, you know, not at the movies, and I just wanted to see it just to pierce in, see what they portray. Hello?
No, go on. What were you saying?
I said I just wanted to pierce in to see, you know, their psyche, you know,
right.
and what they, and it's just like when you see it, it's like, man, you know damn well. I know this is, but I'm just saying, they know. I mean, it's just like, we just gonna pimp and take your culture. I mean, and then they had black people in it. And one of the soft, they made him black. You know, but it was just, you know, it's just, I'm just saying, when you were reading that commentary, I just wanted to state that. That's what it's about.
Right, you can find that. You can find that in White Privilege, Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack, and some notes surrounding it. But it's White Privilege and the Perks, all right, and White Privilege and the World View. You can find that online, all right.
Okay, all righty. Well, thank you so much.
No, thank you. I really appreciate you. All right.
All righty.
All right, take care. All right. All right, very, very interesting that even tuning in late, she picked up on the fact that this whole idea of white privilege tend to serve white people across the people activity spectrum. And when it comes to the area of people activity, area of entertainment, we have to kind of look into exactly what's going on and be very mindful, because our children are watching. Brothers and sisters, Saturday, April 9th, 2016 at 4 p.m., myself and Darren Muhammad in Baltimore, Maryland, as they say, Baltimore, will be at the National Great Blacks and Wax Museum, 1601 East North Avenue, Baltimore, Maryland. Myself, Professor Griff, and Darren Muhammad from the state of the city will be giving a lecture slide presentation at the National Great Blacks and Wax Museum, 1601 East North Avenue, Baltimore, Maryland. Vendors are welcome. Call 443-801-9863. That's 443-801-9863. Or just give me a call, 678-557-2919. The subject matter is ballot or the bullet. We're going to break down this whole ballot process. What's the hidden agenda behind it? And why is Donald Trump threatening people with riots if he doesn't basically get his way? So check us out Saturday, April 9th, 2016 at 4 p.m. in Baltimore, myself and Brother Darren Muhammad. And Nashville, Tennessee, I'll be there 3 times during the lecture series. First thing I'm going to talk about and deal with is Who Stole the Soul. Then I'm going to talk about symbology, which is the name of my new book coming out. And last but not least, the psychotechnology of brainwashing and mind control at the Acabulan Images Bookstore, 2721 Jefferson Street, Nashville, Tennessee. The phone number to call for tickets is 615-321-4111. 615-321-4111. Or call me, 678-557-2919. It's each Thursday, 2 weeks apart, starting Thursday, April 14th, Thursday, April 28th, Thursday, May 12th. All right, 7 to 9 p.m. in Nashville, Tennessee at Acabulan Images Bookstore. All right, 2721 Jefferson Street, Nashville, Tennessee. Professor Griff dealing with the unified God theory. It's a 3-part lecture series. All right, the unified God theory. All right, brothers and sisters. I want to go back to the phone line for the last caller of the evening. Calling from the 336 area code. It's Professor Griff from Serious Minds. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Peace, Lord. I'm Shakir.
Peace.
Oh,
God,
just got in late. Peace, God.
Right.
I was just studying some things, and just you know, the Caucasian is our polar opposite. You know, he, from those words, everything he does. But what's so deep about it, as I was breaking down to somebody the other day, is that, you know, the darker you are, the more light-skinned you are. And the whiter you are, the blacker you are. He said, what? What do you mean by that? I said, well, that black contains the whole color array. red, orange, green, blue, indigo, violet, and the light that you don't see, the ultraviolet. Well, we know black is just not a color, but the term black, when you say it, according to old, I should say Spanish, when you say black in Spanish, it's a term of endearment. You ask any Puerto Rican brother, Cuban brother, they say negro. But if you ask them, what is the Spanish term, because there's another European language for white, and they say blanco, right? Which
Blanco,
comes from the old Middle, right? Which comes from the old Middle English, black, B-L-A-Q or B-L-A-C. This is why he's our polar opposite, which means white. And the scientific term, or what should say, not the term white in the old Middle English, is Paleolithic man, meaning caveman, which the biological term for that guy, you know what that is?
What's that?
Troglodyte nigger. You can't make this stuff up. And the more I study my lessons, the more I love you, God. That's all I had to say. Peace, Almighty.
Peace to the Lord. She always bringing these plus lessons, man. Like just busting brain cells, man. He got me thumbing through stuff over here. I don't even know. I can't. My plus lessons are not even in reaching distance right now. She can't be coming with some stuff. But anyway, we're talking about white privilege. We're talking about white privilege as part of the system of racism, white supremacy. Almost so to the point where when Dr. Francis Cress Welson talked about and gave us a fundamental working definition of racism, white supremacy, on a subconscious level, white folks don't even know that they're being racist. They don't even know. They just think these things are, I guess, what they are and what they're supposed to be. All right, and this is a very real dynamic when it comes to understanding them and how to navigate and have your children navigate through racism, white supremacy. And it's very real that we teach young people this and get them to understand it on a deeper level. All right, it's just some of the things I read earlier. This is just not about the shampoos at hotel and and that kind of stuff. That's just on the surface, because that's some of the ways you can best use something very simple to get people to understand the complexities of white privilege, especially white people. And the dynamic of it is very, very critical, because some of y'all have white friends, but y'all will not talk about these particular things because you don't want to make your white friends uncomfortable. All right? And that you have to do it in a very derogatory, mean-spirited kind of way, but nonetheless, we have to do it because we have to have this conversation. And it's very critical that we have it at this point, simply because we're approaching a time that there's never been a time like this. You have a presidential candidate that's traveling around the country and egging young whites to be violent and to be violent towards people that don't look like them. And people, over 200 million people or better are behind Donald Trump. And that thinking, not necessarily behind Trump, but that thinking. I'm seeing people that had a degree of sophistication and some class about themselves, lining their energy and their thoughts and and putting their efforts behind someone like Donald Trump. It is very, very critical, brothers and sisters. And if no other time in the history of our plight here in America, we need to start learning how to get one another's back, especially on the intellectual level. If you heard something on here that you need to contact me to get the information, as always, I'll let you know. Either find it on YouTube or you can Google it. I'll always give you the author and the title so you can do the research for yourself, to let you know that we have to be able to arm ourselves with the information. So when the conversation come up, we can defend ourselves on an intellectual level, on a spiritual level, because these psychic vampires, they're very, very vicious. All right, and they're hard at work, and this is what they do, because the way they conduct themselves is in them. This is how they've always conducted themselves. They've just been masking it, and now you're about to see this year and the beginning of next year. You're about to see these people's true colors, and you're talking about white privilege being stepped up. You're about to see racism, white supremacy being fine-tuned to the point where you damn near going to be put back into a certain kind of indentured servitude by your own hands. Bobby Hennett called us automatons, where we're going to do it regardless, and this is very real. All right. So let's be mindful of what's going on in politics, but don't be distracted by the terrorist bombing over here and I notice the language that they're using, jihadists, and they keep forcing this ISIS thing down our throats, which I know and understand was made and created by them. All right. Once again, on the political level, it's the Hegelian dialectic principle being played out, and since they control the media, which stands for multi-ethnic destruction in America, or maniac European devils in action, they can put together whatever kind of narrative they want to put together. All right. But shame on you. Don't give Hillary Clinton your energy. Don't give Donald Trump your energy. Say like Boyce Watkins said. I think it was, and W.E.B. Du Bois said it also. Hell, if you don't have anyone to vote for, then don't damn vote. Well, my ancestors fought, bled, and died, and gave me the right. Well, hold your right. Shit, use your left, but just understand that you don't necessarily have to vote if there's no one to vote for. You feel you just have to go through the ritual. You have to go through the process of wanting to vote. Stop that. All right, you don't necessarily have to do that. It's been a very thought-provoking show, White Privilege for Whites Only, here on Serious Minds Radio with your host, Professor Griff. And as always, it's been a pleasure. And I will see y'all next week with the next subject that we have to tackle and deal with. I want to dive into some of this conspiratorial stuff, but I don't want you to write Serious Minds Radio being a conspiratorial kind of radio show, but we have to dive into it on a political tip. We have to piece apart who's the players behind the scenes and how they're moving things. All right? I will see y'all next week. Revolution is not an event. It's a process, brothers and sisters. This is Professor Griff. Peace.
YouTube.com/openupyourmind101